Is Africa Day worth celebrating? Has the African Union succeeded where the OAU had failed? Does the continent have the right caliber of leaders to move it forward? Can cultural diversity be used to promote unity and social cohesion among Africans? What time is it? It's question time. Welcome to the show. My name is Mpho Tsedu. As Africa celebrates 53rd anniversary of the establishment of the now defunct Organization of African Unity, the state of unity among countries in the continent has become a debatable issue. Proponents of African unity and regional integration reiterate that the idea of a united continent will remain a dream for as long as colonial borders exist. The African Union that replaced the OAU in 2002 has its work cut out as it has to grapple with a number of challenges. These include corruption and nepotism, illicit financial flows, unemployment, and political instability on the continent. But has Africa become a better place since 1963? That's the question. We are live, and therefore you can call us and air your views. The numbers to dial 08911042110. Our Twitter handle at Question Time 24. My guest today, Baba Buntu, is an executive director at Ebukhosini Solutions. Courage Mangwiro is a student of international relations and diplomacy at UNISA, and Professor Itumeleng Musala is an academia and a ZAPO leader. Welcome, gentlemen, to the show. Baba, let me start with you there. Is it worth celebrating today?
Well, I think it depends on what we mean by celebrating. I think if we understand the origin of this day, which started out as Africa Freedom Day, and then became African Liberation Day, and then now have been cut down to Africa Day, I think there's a reason for that, and I don't think it's necessarily a good reason. I think this day was put in place by leaders and activists who were concerned about the continent and wanted to reflect deeply, are we actually understanding what liberation means in an African sense? And I think I don't think this day is so much for celebration as it is for having an introspective look. Are we really going all the way? Are we willful in our urge for a free and liberated African continent? And I think we haven't really found a free Africa yet. We are still struggling and grappling with many issues. We grapple with modernity, we grapple with westernization, we grapple with leadership cultures that don't affirm the African narrative and the African story. And I think we still have many potent young people on this continent that are still very confused about who they are. And I think we need to take responsibility for that, even though we didn't create the choice for being a nation that or a continent that often have many confused members. But I think we need to take responsibility for delinking and changing that state of confusion.
The tower is nodding here.
Yes, I'm nodding because I agree. It should have been a day of celebration. It certainly isn't and shouldn't be. We haven't got much to celebrate. Our continent is in a messy state. Our countries are in a messy state. We hardly have leaders worth celebrating. From where I stand, it's a day when we should be mourning. It's a day of lamentation. We should be asking forgiveness from our sons and daughters and our people and our ancestors for the failures that we, I think, should take responsibility for. There was a time when we used to blame the imperialists and colonialists, and in fact, we ought to continue to do that. But you know what? There's a limit to how much we can blame other people for our own limitations and problems.
Courage.
Indeed, a day that I should think is a reflection on our, being African. You see, since the Europeans, invaded Africa around the 1890s, we as Africans were up in arms because of this new environment that was created that saw us being pushed into, a corner and being suppressed and oppressed. But when we engaged in the liberation struggle, most African countries got independent. They got their political independence. But now, it's now an irony. We get to see leaders within the African continent itself doing the same things that our enemies did initially when they came here. They do whatever they want with state resources, squandering and splundering what the rank and file should be benefiting from. And they use state resources. You find situations where the securocrats are in the hands of the ruling party to just ensure that they remain in power, squandering and splundering. But we have some African leaders watching it unfold, and they do nothing about it. Summits are held, Mpo, where leaders come and discuss issues that are pertinent to the African state. It's all glossy and rosy, but such things are not discussed. Leaders don't tell one another to stop, kleptocracy. And it really hurts me. At the end of the day, it hits on the general rank and file. And hence the reason why we see Africa today in such a mess. Africa is in poverty, dire poverty. Africa is faced with a high unemployment rate. Africa is faced with, problems economically. But it is out of our own making as, African leaders. Okay. So there is a lot of work to do as far as I'm concerned.
Tau, when Mark Shuttleworth went to space, and he was hailed as the first African on space, right? He said something that I've never forgotten when he was asked, how did you see Mother Earth from space? And he said, Africa looked very beautiful, and I didn't see any borders.
Yes. Borders are always a problem. Of borders of any sort, whether it's borders between nations, between countries, between groups of people, between genders, between the rich and the poor. Borders have always been a problem. Borders, looking at it from the point of view of what a theologian like myself might imagine, there's no way in which a good God would have created borders anywhere. Much worse for us as a continent. Yeah. Somebody else comes and imposes borders here and divides us, and now we are Anglo-Africans and we are Franco-Africans, and now we are Xhosas and we are Sothos and we are Tswanas, and this is what Stephen Bantu Biko tried to start with in his great movement of black consciousness, that first and foremost we need to unite African and black people. And unless we ourselves are united, we cannot even begin to deal with our enemies. So I would say yes, Mark Shuttleworth, I just regret that it was his ancestors that came here and created borders on our continent, but he was absolutely right. Okay. When the millennium came, I left the continent. I didn't want to be here when the new millennium appeared. I wanted to come in from outside. I went out to Brazil and spent that last day of the old millennium outside of the continent because I was bleeding about this continent.
Samuel, you're in Cape Town. Welcome.
Yes, all I wanted to say is I don't think we have a lot to celebrate for this Africa Day. Because our economies in Africa, I thought by now maybe we were supposed to be encouraging each other to say, if your economy is not doing good, you're not doing good for the whole continent. But it looks like our leaders at this time, they don't discuss about that maybe to say, if your economy is not doing fine, please, it must be corrected. So politically, we're not doing well in Africa, and it's taking us too much backwards.
Thank you very much, sir. But is there anybody to blame for that?
Oh yes, I think, but I want to also move the critical discourse a little bit further. I think it's important what we are saying tonight, that yes, we represent a continent that very much is not really walking its own journey. We walk other people's journey. We use other people's solutions. We even, as you referred to Mark Shuttleworth as the first African in space, I don't agree that he was the first African. I think we still have a need to position Africanness interlinked with blackness. It's very difficult to separate it from that. But the reason I wake up in the morning, the reason I don't give, because the status we are giving here doesn't really give me much reason to live, if you understand what I mean, because this is really a report of gloom and doom. What I think, why I wake up in my life every morning and feel excited about the work that I need to do is because I work with young Africans every single day. And I feel young Africans are representing such an incredibly dynamic potential. And I see the future. I see that Africa is possible. I see that the tomorrow that we actually need is starting to emerge. We see young people standing up saying, we're not going to go to universities and be taught about Europe as the dominant theory. And I think that's such an important message to say, even when it's said in ways that older people feel, oh, but this is too much, this is going too far. It is not too far, it is such a high time. And I feel that young people need to rescue us because we have become so obedient, we have become so loyal to our identities as nationals, of borders that we didn't create, of languages that don't represent us, of cultures that don't even have our image. And I think this is so important that we step into that courage and will to really affirm ourselves as Africans.
Phyllis, you are in Johannesburg.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Okay. Now, what I can see here, you guys are thinking to see that today is a time to celebrate. Sure, the economy is down. Sure that...
Okay. Phyllis, are you gone? Wow. Phyllis, but I think I get your gist there. Courage Phyllis is saying, stop whining and complaining. Yes, things are not well, but there's stuff to celebrate about.
Well, I beg to differ. It's unfortunate that she did not get the chance maybe to elaborate on that. What we could say at this juncture is that there is a lot to, mourn about than there is to really actually emulate and say we did well. Look, there is no country in Africa that is under the influence of European powers or otherwise, politically. We are all sovereign, despite the fact that there are some countries that are facing, internal conflict that may be having some influence from outside. But, when it comes to colonialism, we are done and dusted. But the main issue where I'm stressing is, progress economically. Our leaders are letting us down.
I think we've got Phyllis back. Phyllis, you're back.
Hi, by the name, my name is not Phyllis. And by the way, I'm 12 years old and I know about the economy and I know about all this stuff. By the way, in Africa, we don't have the best economy. We don't have the best of everything. But today is a day to celebrate our cultures and traditions. The day we celebrate where we came from. Sure, we have trials and tribulations, but a tree does not grow in one day. A tree takes time to grow, to become the best it can be. And it goes through storms and all that. And we are going through a big storm right now.
Okay, but now, well, you said your name is not Phyllis. I was given Phyllis here. Okay, I don't know what to call you now that you're saying your name is not Phyllis, but I wanted to just ask one thing or so. Here is a young child, Tao, saying, look, all is not bad, there's things to celebrate.
No, she's right, but remember we were saying, should we celebrate the 25th of May 2016? The answer to that is no. We should lament, we should ask for forgiveness, we should reflect. But we're not saying there's nothing on this continent in terms of the history of this continent, the wealth of this continent, the people of this continent, the cultures of this continent, in particular the identity, the humanity and the blackness of our people.
The divided people and themselves.
They are divided, but blackness in itself is not a problem.
And I'm talking division to such an extent that the South African national coach, Ndade Mashaba, when he has to go and play another fellow African team, he says, when you go out to Africa. It is very tough.
Yeah.
But let's take Itumeleng. Itumeleng, you are in Pretoria. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Mpo.
Yeah.
You know what, Mpo, every time people talk about Africa or about us black people, they would always talk about colonization and white people. But we never hear them talk about Buki Mushweshwe, Shaka Zulu, you know, they never talk about the history of black people. Where we come
Okay, Itumeleng, we are hearing the little to me there. More than you now. I don't know if you're able to. Okay, well, we're proud of you, by the way, Itumeleng. We are proud of you as men, you know, representing fathers there. Let me just bring you on there. Let's also talk about, you know, the history of African leaders as well. Your Mushweshwes, your Shakas, you know, and all that.
Yes, you know, and I completely agree with Ntate that we have a lot to celebrate and accentuate and uplift about our history, and even about, we have many great people in our communities. They might not always reach the status of being acknowledged heroes, but we have a lot of people who do many great things for this continent, and we need to highlight that. I think what we are saying is that on a day like this is not, let's not turn it into just a celebration with drums and dance and food, which is important in other instances. But today, if we know where this comes from, this day comes from 1958.
Has the OAU mission failed?
Yes, it has. I don't think that's any secret. I think there are very few people who would disagree with and say that it has not failed us. I think this is why we are concerned if we just turn this day, which marks a very important starting point of saying African nations are going to take charge of their own future. We're not going to allow people now to dictate our development. We're not going to create mindsets that comes with the mask of blackness but represents Europeanness. But we have done that. And that's why we shouldn't celebrate. That's why we should reflect. That's why we should, I expect governments of Africa to use these days to bring out the most excellent thinkers, the most radical voices, the most representative people of nations, those we might not see on podiums the rest of the year, to really take stock. Are we walking towards freedom? Are we not? Of course, if that only makes sense if we use the other 364 days to actually put what we say today into practice. Okay. But I just think that's what the day should be about.
Samki, you are in Nelspruit. Hello, Samki? Yes, go ahead. We're battling. The line is not well at all, Samki.
Okay, I hear you well,
yes,
but
go
you
ahead.
Can't hear me.
Yeah, go ahead. I can hear you now.
Quickly, I just wanted to say, you know, we're sitting and we're lamenting. We never modeling Africa, our economy, our humanity, everything in an African perspective. We're growing the young ones in a lamenting perspective again, what we grew up with. And what is it that we're doing? We're changing nothing in the education to actually get those young ones to start seeing themselves as Africans, seeing themselves as an African economy, focusing on the things that Africa is strong on. All we're doing, we're all trying to copycat whatever is happening around the globe and leaving the things that we're strong as South Africans. As adults, what are we doing? We're standing up and we're lamenting and saying we need to complain, we need to mourn. Yes, we need to celebrate, but then surely we could package our celebration on specific things that we're changing as a continent. Thanks, people.
Thank you very much, Samke in Nelspruit. Courage, how much hope do you have when you, in particular, when you're walking around the streets of Johannesburg, when somebody finds out that actually courage comes from Zimbabwe, then their attitude changes?
Well, it depends on their, personal reason why their attitude changes. But what I can say is that I understand quite well situations like that, where you have this influx of, foreign nationals into South Africa, thereby jeopardizing maybe chances of employment to the local nationals. They wonder, don't these people have a home? I mean, yes, one is allowed by international, laws to freedom of movement, But when you have tens of millions of people from another country in another country, then a lot of questions are bound to be asked. So really, I would understand them from that angle. But now, what I would like to quickly point out is that what do we do now as Africa? I call upon leaders, African leaders, on these summits that they hold. They know states that are facing challenges of leaders that are no longer wanted because of certain reasons, corruption, rigging of elections. Why don't they help citizens?
And
citizens
you don't
are
include
hopeless.
Robert Mugabe
Citizens
in there, right?
are not armed. They are under the control of the military and all the other securocrats that are on the sides of the ruling party, and they do whatever they want with them. These people are under, oppression, and African leaders should see means of really chipping in and try to rescue them, than just come and give speeches that are in very good English. They don't benefit us, please.
Okay, but I was saying that quickly. You do not in any way include President Mugabe in
I did not mention President Mugabe. I did not mention, but the heads of states that I'm referring to right now, they know themselves. And it pertains straight to them, and they must stop it. We do not want.
Is Robert Mugabe one of them?
The last thing that African people are going to do is to take up arms against them.
No, I'm saying, is Robert Mugabe one of them?
Are going to be prepared to die just to liberate themselves. They liberated themselves from the white minority. Now they will liberate themselves again from the black majority that they deemed, people were on their side.
So but I'm not going to get an answer, right?
No, I did not include Robert Mugabe on that list.
Okay.
Yes.
Francois, you're in the Eastern Cape. Very quickly.
Yes, sir. Good evening, Mpo. How are you doing?
I'm well. Thanks for the call, Francois.
Very well, very well. Mpo, when you are celebrating, what do you celebrate? You do celebrate victories. You think of the exploits, the achievements, and that is that you never bring in, pain as to colonialization and all those kind of things. You look at what you have achieved, and then you celebrate that, and you take people along who you think, they've been there all along, patriots and all those people whom you can actually say, no, man, we are all Africans. Let's celebrate because we've got a beautiful continent, and that is that.
Okay.
That's what I think about, this celebration.
Thank you very much, Francois.
You're welcome.
Well, Tawa, we need solutions.
Yeah.
To get solutions, we need to diagnose the problem correctly. And over the years, over the 10, 20, 30, 40 years that have passed, we constantly got it wrong. We get it wrong because the diagnosis that we get is not our own. It's not from us. It's from the same people who created our problem, are the same people who tell us what our problem is. And as long as we continue to do that, each and every one of these leaders will continue to fail. I include everybody in that. I include Mugabe, I include Zuma, I include all of these African leaders. They have failed us. We need time now to let our young people, we need time to allow our intellectuals, we need time to allow our working class people to come into the center stage and to begin to drive this continent. In my country, my hope, you asked about hope, my hope are young people. My hope are women who used to be in the background for many years, who are moving into the center space at the moment, redefining the problem. My hope are the working class people and the communities that are rising up and saying, don't define to us what democracy is. Don't tell us that we are being violent. Don't tell us that we are breaking schools and we shouldn't be breaking schools. What about when you broke schools? What did you think you were doing? What did you think was the problem? Didn't you think that there was an oppression to be dealt with? Don't you see there's an oppression to be dealt with now? So those people are the ones who will define the future now. We need a revolution.
Okay, hold it there.
On the continent and in the country.
Let's check out our tweets, what our viewers are saying there at question time 24. Muraro Nechpepe says, it remains in our hands to ensure that we push the African Renaissance agenda so that we celebrate Africa Day with understanding. Okay, that's Muraro. And then El Mahlalela says, Africa is still bleeding in Western world, and Western world continues to swallow its blood, so we can't celebrate now. Okay. And Kumalo Mapasha says, we have done a lot. We could do better. We have got a good story to tell. Okay, yes. Kumalo. Well, let me just give you closing thoughts now.
Okay, no, just quickly, I wanted to correct my brother here when he says that many people have this notion that there's tens of millions of foreign nationals. I think that's very problematic. We are brothers and sisters on this continent. Others made us foreigners to each other, and we must oppose that. I don't think there's anything that justifies the hatred that some black people feel against other people. This is a design of black destruction, and then we need to stand up to that. And I think we are beginning that discourse. Lastly, I wanted to say, I'm here representing a company that wants to look at solutions. Every day we work at decolonizing the family, the community, African men, African women. And so I'm saying it's not like nothing is happening. It is, but we need to push much harder. We need to stand taller.
Unfortunately, we've run out of time. Courage. We'll talk about this next time. Thank you very much. That was question time for today. A big thank you to my guest and to you for watching the show. From me and the crew, you have yourself a wonderful time. Goodbye.